Good morning, Coach. We're here on Wednesday, August the 19th. We're back for another episode of Better Than I Found It. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Mikkel. I appreciate you getting up early to help me record this.
Yeah. It's been an exciting week for golf. We've watched a lot of the U.S. Amateur. You have any thoughts on what transpired over there?
Well, it was an exciting final, that was for sure. And actually, the semifinals were pretty amazing too. But I want to point out the fact that we did have a player make match play, and that was Travis McEnroe. He shot a couple of really great rounds and finished fourth in the stroke play portion out of over 260 players. And then he did lose his first round match, but he played great this week. It was really nice to see a Baylor Bear there in match play. It was great. We had four other guys who actually made the championship as well. That was Colin Kober, Cooper Dossie, Ryan Greider, and Johnny Kiefer. So we were well represented there, and the championship itself was very exciting, and I thought the golf course showed well.
Yeah, the final was really exciting, and I watched some of it with Tyler Strafacci winning there for Georgia Tech. They've won 2 in a row now, and that was just a really cool interview, I thought, after he won, and he kind of praised his dad, and really cool moment to see that. Ollie Osborne from SMU finished runner-up. Very exciting match and great for college golf, I think, overall.
Yes, and then also we had a really special thing happen up in Norman, Oklahoma just a couple of days ago in one of those GCAA amateur events, actually the first one. Brandon Hoff fired a 9 under par, 63 course record at Jimmy Austin Golf Course in Norman, Oklahoma. He had 10 birdies, only 1 bogey, birdied the last hole with about a 16-foot putt, buried it. That was a great final round. And he was a little bit in the middle of the pack going into the final round, but he did finish 5th. So that was a great way to come into the school year with a course record.
And if you want to see the final putt of that round, I think it was about a 15-footer that he holed and a little nice fist pump.
Yeah, it was.
It's on our Baylor Men's Golf Instagram page,
yeah,
so go over there and look at that.
Proud of him as well.
Well, we're back here. We're at the Baylor Williams practice facility on campus, and we have a lot of our guys in town, actually, but we haven't seen them yet, have we?
No, this pandemic, which I'm going to talk a little bit about later, has got us in a quarantine. So they're going to spend a 7-day quarantine before they can kind of come out and start actually, participating in team activities. So hopefully they've got a lot to. I know they have putting mats and hitting nets in their apartments, so they're going to do as much as they can with the pandemic quarantine.
Yep. Well, we're excited that they're back, and so for this podcast episode, we don't have a guest, but Coach, you've prepared some thoughts that you want to share with the listeners today. A little bit of a topic episode, I guess we'll call it. And it kind of relates to the guys being back for school, doesn't it?
It does. We're going to start classes next Monday, and so that will initiate the beginning of learning in a formal sense for the school year. So we do that every year, and they do it on every campus across the country. So learning will begin to take place in a formal way in a classroom. Some of them may be online, but the formal learning of an education will be taking place. And really that got me to thinking with that taking place, and some of the kids are freshmen, so that's brand new to them, and some of the guys are seniors, they're coming back for the 4th or 5th year. But it got me to thinking about the learning stage that I've been in for the last, probably 7 years. And it's probably been the greatest learning stage of my career. Well, it has been the greatest learning stage of my career, and it's been in my mid to late 50s and early 60s that I've been able to do this. And it actually started when I was let go at Oklahoma State, and we talked about that a couple of podcasts ago about getting fired at Oklahoma State and finally going to Alabama and then ending up here at Baylor. But I don't want to rehash that story. That's not what it's about. But what should have been the lowest point of my coaching career actually was a rebirth, and it was the start of something really great. I believe a rebirth in 2 ways. One was in enthusiasm, and I spent a year with Jay Sewell, and it's impossible not to be a little bit enthused about life and about golf and about college golf when you spend a year with Jay. Every single day was a lot of fun. He and I laughed and joked and we cried, and we just had an amazing year together. But he kind of reintroduced me to the enthusiastic young coach that I once was. So I spent a year kind of doing that. And then when I was fortunate enough to get the job here at Baylor, I had already started a process that I called Stuff That Works. And so I started writing this journal in Alabama, along with getting all that enthusiasm back. I wanted to kind of start thinking, what have I learned in coaching through the years? What do I know? What do I think is knowledge that I possess, that I know? But how can I take it and keep on learning? So basically it was, okay, I need to identify things I think are true and right and that I've learned in coaching, because I'd been coaching over 25 years at that time. And then open up the door for a new learning stage. And so that Stuff That Works journal I combined that with, in this time, so this 7 years, I counted last night in my bookshelves, I've read 63 books on leadership, toughness, grit, culture, coaching biographies. I've been reading. Now, I know a lot of people read, and probably a ton of people read more than I do, but all of those books were meant to learn something about coaching. And here I was in my late 50s and early 60s. So I combined the Stuff That Works journals, where I was literally documenting things I'd learned through my career, with an upscale amount of reading that I had not been doing before. And while I think that's great to read, I also think it's important to journal what you're experiencing. So I started doing that even more so than I had before. So basically, that's in a nutshell, 7 years of, on a daily basis, learning, reading, growing, and I've just been in a growth stage for 7 years.
But those journals, I think people know that you're famous for your journaling. And so you've always journaled throughout your coaching career, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
But the Stuff That Works, when you came to Baylor my senior year, you showed me this book, and that was the start of really Better Than I Found It a little bit too, wasn't it?
It was. I didn't mean it. I didn't know I was going to write a book, but I did know that I was trying to identify what I was learning and what I had learned and what made sense and what I was going to... I knew I wanted to reinvent myself as a coach here at Baylor. I didn't have any reason to say that I think I know all this. This is the way it's going to be. And that's the only way it's going to be. It was like, this is what I believe now, and then let's learn from there. So it started remember, I was 54 when I got the job at Baylor, so I was 53 when I got let go and started those journals, the Stuff That Works journals. I think that for me, it was speaking to myself. I was a veteran coach already, and I wanted to kind of be able to speak to other veteran coaches if they had a question. It's like, there's a lot of things you have to be careful at when you are a veteran coach, because it's very easy to get in cruise control. I don't know if you've ever been in cruise control as a young 28-year-old. I doubt it.
I'm too young for that.
Yeah, but when you're a veteran, you think, well, I've got these things figured out, so sure, I'm just kind of cruising right through this. And the truth is, I saw a lot of my colleagues over the last 20 years, in the time that I've been in college coaching, about 25 years, that were in cruise control, and you knew it and you could see it, and they weren't recruiting as hard as they were before. Everything was better in the old days. To them, it was like, why are these young kids changing everything? Why are they? And you know what? That's human nature, I think. Mm-hmm. But when I was in this learning stage, and I knew it was very obvious to me I had to be in a learning stage, the cruise control mentality had to leave. I had to feel like I was a young 25-year-old kid just getting going again. And so that's kind of why all of this felt right to me. You know, that old saying, you can't teach old dog new tricks. I think that's so wrong, because I've learned a lot since I've been here at Baylor. But so that mentality of cruise control was gone immediately. And I'd probably been in cruise the last few years at Oklahoma State.
How, if I can peel that back one more layer, so how do you think that kind of manifests itself in you in the kind of cruise control mentality that you're talking about at Oklahoma State? What weren't you doing as good a job of as you should have? Well,
developing young players, because I had a lot of really great players at that time, and some of those guys turned pro early. And, you know, when a first-team All-American College Player of the Year turns pro, that leaves a big hole. And you either hopefully fill that hole with a guy you recruited, and I missed on a couple of years in a row. I missed on a bunch of good players. And if you don't have that, you better have somebody you've been developing. So I was in cruise control and thinking we were just going to be good. And we were. But once those players started graduating, matriculating out of campus, turning pro, whatever it is, we had nobody to fill. And so we had some people to fill, but I wasn't doing a good enough job of developing players. And we had a bunch of young, talented kids that were hungry, but we just didn't do a good enough job of developing them. So I think cruise control is dangerous for anybody because success has a way of making you think you can't mess up or fail, but man, you can. And that's kind of where I was. So
Is that also a little bit of the reason why you try to limit your roster size now?
100%.
Yeah.
Because every time you add somebody to your roster, you spread yourself and your assistant coach and your resources and the golf course where you play and your practice area. It's all stretches thinner. And I want to give 100% of me as much as I can to every player on the team. And when I add a player, it needs to make sense because I'm adding somebody that I am responsible to help and coach and motivate and challenge and push and whatever. And so when the team got really big at the end at Oklahoma State, it was another reason I wasn't able to spend time developing the younger ones. So I just knew at Baylor I was never going to be in cruise control. And that included so much as, we went out and raised about $6.7 million to go build a practice facility. Well, I didn't have to do that. We had a practice facility. It was about 25 minutes from campus, but we had one. And so, Jay Goebel and I really kind of just thought this needs to happen if we're going to compete with the best teams in the country or even the best teams in the Big 12. We have to have something on campus. So that was a non-cruise control mentality. We went out and did that. Changing a recruiting philosophy of actually recruiting very hard in Texas, knowing I was going to get my nose bloodied in some recruiting battles. That was going to happen. But it was okay. I had to do that. That's not cruise control. I could have gone and just taken an easier route. But cruise control is a dangerous place to be. Don't want to be there. Don't think I'm there today at 60, and pretty sure.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to no cruise control here.
Yeah.
Where it's 8:25 and I just rolled up because I have a son to take to daycare and whatnot. And you're on hour, 4 in the office just now?
In the ballpark.
Yeah.
So I get going pretty early.
I can definitely attest to that.
Well, and another thing I wanted to talk to veteran coaches about was the know-it-all mentality, just because I have experience. I mean, I've got 35 years of coaching experience, so I know something. And if I don't, something's wrong. I do know something. But to think that I know it all and Mikkel, you as the assistant coach, must listen to everything I say, it's kind of dangerous too, because then I stop learning. When I know it all, I have stopped learning. That's a fact. I mean, honestly, I'm speaking this morning on this podcast. I'm not doing that much learning. The only learning I'm doing is when you interject your thoughts and then I do some learning. But when I'm talking, I'm not learning. I'm just telling people what I think I know. So know-it-all mentality to me is just as dangerous as being on cruise control, because you're not doing anything if you know it all. You're just, look at me, look what I know. So I know what I know right now, but I better know more tomorrow or even this afternoon than I know right now.
Yeah. I guess that's easy to fall into too. You do have 35 years, but that includes 3 national championships. It includes all these guys on the PGA Tour. But I do think you're very, very humble for, I don't know, just the experience you have and also just the knowledge and what you've seen in your profession.
Thank you, Mikkel. And that actually leads into my next point. The players on the tour, or the current players we have or whatever, it's pretty easy to see and look on a platform, okay, these players are playing the tour, these players are doing this, and try to take credit for it. And it happens a lot. But the truth is, those players taught me as well. So if I look back at the players that I've coached, I think I'm the expert mentality, so the player learned everything from me, is a horribly arrogant place to be. It's not a good spot. For one, if all I'm able to do is teach them and they're not able to teach me, then that's a one-way street. And it isn't one way. I actually can learn from my players. It doesn't go one direction. And so, I mean, I can even talk about a lot of opportunities to do that here at Baylor since I've been here. I mean, it's always happened, but I didn't know this mentality until I started growing as a 54 to 60-year-old coach. It was like it occurred to me. So a couple things I want to say is, one, I probably have, for years, whatever my team captain did, I was still driving the bus, if you will, and the team captain sort of helped me have a pulse on what the team was doing or whatever, but I didn't give him enough autonomy or ownership of the team. And so I think a couple of years ago, when we knew that Colin Coburn and Cooper Dossie were going to be senior team captains, Ryan Blagg and I, my assistant coach at the time, Ryan, we decided we need to coach these guys up a little bit and start talking to them about how leadership works and how they could lead the team. And so we gave them some more responsibility. We actually allowed them to create team practices, do some things like that. I think it's helped our team because I've relinquished a little bit of the control and said, Colin, Cooper, what do you guys think? How would you do this practice? What are some good ideas? And by doing that, we've actually gotten better. And you haven't experienced it yet because you just got here to Baylor. But I know Ryan Blagg thought it was a great idea. And it means you kind of have to step back. Mm-hmm. Kyle Jones, just in that last podcast that I said when he signed his glove, I mean, he taught me more about how somebody can own their own game right then. I'd never thought about it that way. But it's like Kyle owns his own game. And it may not look like you want it to look, or like conventional wisdom would say Kyle Jones's golf swing needs to look or whatever. But he's playing the tour, and he's winning, and he's a very, very successful professional golfer doing it his way. Well, I wasn't even thinking about it. He taught me that. You taught me something. In that first year I was at Baylor, do you remember what you came into my office and something I still use today? Do you remember what it was?
Is this about Olympia Fields or no?
Well, actually, Olympia Fields that was a learning. You taught me about 8 or 10 things that year.
Yeah, I do know
what is it?
The stats that I used?
Yeah, the stat he used. You used a stat called embedded shots, and it was basically a precision stat for driving, and it measured how well you actually hit the ball compared to where you wanted to hit it, not just if you hit a fairway or not.
Yeah, and this is before strokes gained was common knowledge and all that, and so it was to put a value on your missed drives.
Yeah.
To where you don't just count fairways hit and fairways missed.
I've used that ever since, and actually, if I take your stat and kind of mirror it with strokes gained or driving, it's actually pretty much the same thing. It's just a different number, but it's the same thing. And you figured that out. You taught me that. I've been using it ever since, and I love it, and it's an easy stat to keep. One of the things I did since I got to Baylor was tournament summaries. I tried to start it at Alabama, and we did it a couple of times when I was an assistant coach. But truly learning from the player what he just learned at the tournament, and then having, by him writing turning points in the round, things he did well, things he didn't do well. He could include some statistics, whatever it is. But these tournament summaries I've taken very seriously because I think I can learn a lot more about a player when he's telling me what he thinks. And if I happen to walk with the player at the tournament, well, I've got my perspective too, so we can discuss it. But it makes post-tournament meetings with an individual player a lot more valuable. And that's something I didn't do before. But it's been huge for me because I'm learning about how I can help a player progress based upon what actually happens to him in a tournament. So that's been good. But one of the most important things that I've learned at Baylor from players, and all those things right there are things I learned from players or an assistant coach, was a meeting I had the day after we got back from the NCAA championship in 2018. So we had just had a team that I felt like should make match play at Karsten Creek.
Yeah.
And we finished 30th. That's dead last at the national championship. And on the way back, I told Ryan Blagg, I said, you know what, we need these individual meetings that we're going to have the next 2 days. We need these to mean something more than they've meant in the past. We need those guys to help us be better coaches. They need to tell us where we're failing. They need to tell us where we're falling short. And because normally when you do an end of the year meeting, I mean, it's pretty standard. What do? You bring him in and say, Johnny, here's where you were in August. Here's kind of the way the school year went and your tournaments and your results. Here's where I think you are today. So here's the things I think you need to do over the summer to come back in August a better player. And you check off that box, you send that boy out of the room, and you bring in the next one.
Yep.
Do you know where I'm going?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and it's like I'd been doing those meetings for years, but I decided after we played so poorly, I knew there were some problems on the team. I didn't know what they were, but I knew if we just had a check off the box mentality, that I wasn't going to learn anything from those meetings. So I told Ryan, I said, Colin's the first meeting, Colin Cober, he's the first meeting. And I can't tell you exactly how it's going to go, Ryan, but I can tell you this, it's going to be different. So Colin sat down in the deal, and Colin was a really, really talented kid from Southlake, Texas, who had finished his second year at Baylor and hadn't played well, and he was our substitute at the national championship, so he didn't even get to play at nationals. So he's my first meeting, and I knew Colin wasn't happy at the time. I knew he wasn't just loving his experience at Baylor. It wasn't perfect. But I hadn't done much to do anything about it. So I thought, well, okay, this meeting is going to provide some clarity. He and I are going to have some open moments here. And so I started the meeting with this. I said, Colin, I bet you think this meeting is going to be similar to last year's end of the year meeting. And Colin, who's probably one of the most intelligent kids that I've ever coached in 35 years, you could tell he was looking at me trying to think, well, what does he want out of this? He didn't say anything. I said, well, you want to know what I'm trying to get at? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, I want this meeting to be open and honest. So here's the ground rules for this meeting between you and me today. I want you to tell me anything you want to today, as long as you're respectful. And I'll be respectful to you. But as long as you're respectful, you can tell me anything. Tell me how I'm failing you. Tell me how the program's not doing well. Tell me how we could change practices. Tell me this, tell me that. You tell me everything about this situation right now. And you have complete immunity as long as you're respectful, because I need to hear it. And Colin, I'm going to tell you the same about you. And that's what we're going to do during this meeting. And so Colin, being the really intelligent kid, he hadn't said anything yet. You can just see those wheels turning in his head. And I'm sure he's thinking to himself, is this a trap? Is he trying to trap me into saying something? And I said, well, Colin, you obviously don't have much to say. Do you want me to start? And he said, oh, that'd be really good. So I started my conversation. I told him everything I felt like, where he was, why he was, where I thought he could do better, whatever. And then we started exchanging sort of punches back and forth for about 30 minutes. And he was able to say a few things that he wanted to say, but I could tell he was still holding back. And here I've got the smartest kid I've ever coached probably, and he hasn't really given me everything. And it's tough to get a true evaluation from a kid who still has eligibility. That's hard. Why is that hard?
Yeah, I mean, you have some sort of control over him, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Who goes on the bus? That's your call.
And he's not. But I said, Colin, I appreciate everything you said so far, but I think you're holding back. And he said, well, yeah, the truth is I probably am. And I said, well, don't worry about it, Colin. Just tell me. It's okay as long as you're respectful. We've been respectful to each other so far, so just do that and tell me what's on your mind.
So you're 30 minutes in and you're getting to this point.
Yeah, I'm finally getting to this point after 30 minutes. And he goes, well, Coach, Baylor was never on my radar. And then you followed me one day at a junior tournament right before my junior year. And then you started writing letters, and I still wasn't interested in Baylor at all. And finally you called me up you didn't call me. You asked me, in an email you said, will you please call me? I would like to arrange for a time for you to come down and visit. And this is when you could still take official visits or unofficial visits anytime. But it was his junior year, so it was okay anyway. So he came on that visit, and he's telling me this story. He said, I came on that visit, and I told my mom when I got back home, Mom, you need to come down on the next time. I think there's some things about this that I like. And so I came back down on the next visit, and on that visit, you promised me 3 things. Do you remember what those are, Coach? And I said, yeah, Colin, I do. I tell everybody that. Every recruit hears that. He said the first thing he promised me was that if I came to Baylor, I'd get a degree. Now, we both know I'm probably going to get my degree here at Baylor. That's not an issue. You promised me that if my dream was to play the PGA Tour, that you couldn't make me a PGA Tour player. You said no one can do that, but you could push me closer to my dream. And he said, I'm not sure if I'm closer to my dream of playing the PGA Tour because I haven't played very well. But that's on me, too. Part of that's on me because I haven't done what I'm supposed to do to get to be better. But the third promise, Coach, you failed. He said, do you know what that promise is? And I said, yeah, of course I do. And he said, the third promise you made was whatever love I had for the game of golf coming into college, how much I love playing the game. When I spent 4 years with you, Coach, that I would love the game that much or more when I left campus. And I got to tell you, Coach, this spring I did not enjoy practice. I didn't enjoy workouts. I didn't enjoy coming to team meetings. I didn't even enjoy traveling with the team. I didn't enjoy being around you. I didn't like anything about this experience. Now you can imagine me sitting there across the table. He was respectful about it, but he just told me the truth. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, Colin, a couple things. One, we all can control whatever our influences are around us. We can still control what we think and feel. I mean, you're a big boy. You should be able to. So I'm not going to take 100% of that. But the fact is, you are correct. I knew you were unhappy. I knew you weren't enjoying golf. I knew you weren't passionate about it anymore. And I did nothing about it. But that ends right here, Colin. From this day forward, you and I are going to work on your love for the game of golf. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I promise you, I'm going to remake that promise that you will enjoy golf and love golf and be passionate about it when you leave here. And if the truth be known, I've never told Colin this, even to this day. Going into that meeting, there was a part of me, a very small percentage, but a part of me that thought Colin may be coming in here today to tell me he wants to leave. Mm-hmm. Because that's how aware I was that he was unhappy. Mm-hmm. Now, he did an amazing job at Karsten Creek as a sixth man, knowing he probably wasn't going to play as a substitute. He was the best cheerleader I've seen. He was amazing. And he told me in that meeting he was very intentional about being a good cheerleader, being a good teammate. He was unhappy about it because he wanted to play. But the truth is, I was aware he was unhappy, and I didn't do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And here I finally got to a point where a kid told me the truth in a meeting. That was a big thing he taught me right there. And he taught me that I can't go on cruise control with just thinking, kids, everything's fine. I've got to pay attention to it. And I knew this instinctively, that he was having a rough time. Well, Colin's had 2 really great years at Baylor, and so much so that he decided to take advantage of a COVID 5th year. And he's going to be back as a team captain with Cooper Dossie again this year. So Colin Cobra, a player, taught me a lot that day, and I'm open to my players teaching me. So coaches, don't ever get in a mentality your player can't teach you. He gets 1 or 2 coaches, depending upon if the school has an assistant coach. We get 10 to 12 of them every year. So, Mikkel, you're getting ready to have 12 coaches here in a week when we get to start with the guys. So that's one of the mentalities that I've learned during this learning stage, is players can teach you as much as you can teach them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's awesome, because that was probably your 33rd end of the year meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so easy to just do the same thing, because you have the time for the kid and you go through the same deal and you make them better on paper. But that's an awesome story of kind of digging deeper and going another step to really learn from the kid and really get to know the kid.
Well, what was interesting was he wasn't having a good experience, particularly. I mean, he was unhappy. But I got him to a point where he was open enough to be honest with me. And he took that opportunity. I mean, some coaches, that's going to be, and it was for me too. You think I wanted to hear that? You think that was enjoyable for me? No. The same way a kid doesn't want to hear criticism or instruction or whatever if it's going to hurt to hear it. But you have to. So I think a coach, whether he's a veteran or a young coach like you, you've got 12 guys that have the potential to help you this year. Now, your job is to coach them as well as you can, but
for sure.
But they have a chance to help you. So that's one thing I've learned in this 7-year learning stage.
Yeah.
One other thing I've learned is my way or the highway mentality. I'm telling you, back in the days of Bear Bryant, Vince Lombardi, or whatever, kids weren't as sophisticated then. Even a professional football player playing for Vince Lombardi was not as sophisticated as they are today. So they know more today. Yeah. They're more aware of things today. And my way or the highway does not work. And my way, whatever it is right now, even the things we're talking about in this podcast, these better develop and evolve and change a little bit over the next 5 to 10 years, or something about this must change. If it doesn't, that means that I thought I had the answer and that was it. I have the answer as I know it today, the same way surgeons and scientists have answers today based upon scientific knowledge that we understand today. But something they were doing 50 years ago in surgery is barbaric compared to what they're doing now. So 50 years from now, can you imagine what they're going to be doing? Well, that's what I want to do with the coaching profession. I want 50 years from now, it's like these guys are a great group of people. College golf coaches are amazing what they can do. My way or the highway does not work because it's basically this is it and no other answers.
Yeah, that's sort of like this COVID environment where we've had all these Zoom meetings and, you know, you've obviously hired a 28-year-old. You can do most of these things yourself, but it does happen from time to time where I need to run into Coach McGraw's office and figure out that your Zoom button on your email is wrong or whatever. But if you were the my way or the highway mentality, then it'd be kind of like that fax machine out there. That's the only technology help I've had to ask Coach McGraw for.
Fax machines are not modern day.
In 2.5 months, I had some medical records that needed to go somewhere when we moved. And Coach McGraw, you had to help me with the fax machine. I wasn't up to date on that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But, you know, that gets to my next point, which is we said we can learn from our players. Well, we can learn from our assistant coaches as well. It's pretty easy to think, well, I've been coaching 35 years. You've been coaching 4.
Yep.
So what do you know? Well, you might know a lot more than me. And Barry Henson, who's a basketball coach at Oklahoma State University, a great guy. If you met Barry Henson, you'd want to go have lunch with him immediately. Just such a great personality, but an inspiring coach as well. And he once was quoted as saying, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you need to get another room. Mm-hmm. And I remember him saying that, and I thought to myself, what does he mean by that? Well, what he's meaning is hire people around you that are smarter than you. Hire people around you that are more creative thinkers than you. Because basically I've got the baggage of 35 years of this is what it looks like. Mm-hmm. You've got a fresher, newer look at coaching. Ryan Black had the same thing before he left to go to Louisville. He was amazing, but the beauty of it is you're 27 when you got here. He was 40 when he left, and that's 13 or 14 years right in there of you're even fresher and newer to the game than he is. So he needs to hire a young, somebody that's really going to, that's what I'm saying is, the point is I'm trying to make is I plan on learning from you. And if you don't plan on teaching me, shame on you. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I respect that. That's real cool.
I like that. The final thing that I think that I've learned over this 7-year period that has been valuable for me has been vulnerability. I always knew what the word meant, but that was just a dictionary definition of the word. Now I truly understand what being vulnerable. My wife, Pam, will occasionally tell me that I overuse vulnerability, that it's too much a part of, too humble, too whatever. And the truth is, I'd rather err on that side than on the side of arrogance, on the side of I know everything. If I'm vulnerable, then a player can teach me. If I'm vulnerable, then an assistant coach can teach me. If I'm vulnerable, a competitor, a guy I'm trying to whip his tail at a golf tournament, he might learn something. You learned something from a coach, a really highly respected Division I coach here recently, that you told me a story about.
Who's that?
Matt Thurman.
Oh, yeah.
Matt Thurman, Arizona State, a wonderful coach, a great coach. And we won't go into all the details, but go ahead.
You think about the minimum line?
Yeah.
Yeah, I pick up things from all sorts of coaches, but Matt Thurman is another coach I really respect, obviously, and he was teaching me how he thinks about goal setting for his players. And, every player that he has, most of them come in with the same goal of playing the PGA Tour. They want to win in college. They want to be All-Americans. But what he taught me is what he truly tries to figure out in recruiting and also with the kids on his team is what's their true minimum line. And as a coach, you probably have a good sense of what the true minimum line for your player is. You know, the way they speak about a round, if it's a recruit you're talking to, you know, if you ask them, how was your tournament? And they might say, well, I played really good, but messed up a couple places and shot 74, but I'm playing good and I'm feeling good. To Matt Thurman, he told me, you know, that tells you something about that kid, that he was okay with shooting a 74. And his best players, he said, they wouldn't be okay with shooting a 74. You know, some of your best players that are first-team All-Americans, it's very few of them that would have said prior to the season, I'm okay with just being an All-American this year, or getting at that. They would have been really upset if they weren't one of the best players in the country. And so I thought that was a really interesting perspective, and you pick up stuff like that from all sorts of coaches in the country.
And you're a 27-year-old when you learn that.
Yeah.
And but my point with this sort of podcast today is that it's much more easier. It's much easier for a 27-year-old to be vulnerable and open. I'm learning, I'm listening, I'm asking questions.
Sure.
But a guy my age, we're not so inclined to do that. You know, I learned from Matt Thurman. He's taught me a lot through the years. I still learn from him. And it's great that you had that, but I have to be vulnerable enough to know that he's a 40-year-old or whatever he is. He can teach me a 60-year-old without any question.
And a competitor. Whereas I'm young and I'm, you know, inexperienced, so it's easy for me to take that role. But for you, that's tougher.
And that's what I'm telling you, it's tougher. You should do it.
Yeah.
And it's part of your learning stage too. But here I am at a learning stage right now. I want people to pour into me things that I can learn and make me better. And part of that is, I may be 60 years old right now. There's no question in my mind, if done right, if I keep this attitude, if I stay in the learning stage, if I stay there, I'll be better at 70 than I am at 60. Now, I know my body won't be. I was telling you about some arthritis pain this morning. Yeah. It's not perfect, that part of it. But why shouldn't you be a better coach at 70 than you are at 60? Because conventional wisdom tells you otherwise. Mm-hmm. It tells you that, you're not supposed to be able to, your skills are diminishing. You're not going to be as good as you used to be. Well, no, if you think that and believe that, you won't. But I'm not going to stop learning until the day they ask me to leave. And then I'll just go find someplace else to keep learning. I mean, that's the way I plan on doing it. I want to stay in this growth stage. It's a healthy, it's an exciting, it's a vibrant, it's an organic place to be, if you will. And so kind of want to tie this up with talking about where we are right now in the world. We're in the middle of the only pandemic that I can remember really affecting our lives. And so our guys are having to quarantine this week. That's unusual. Our fall season is either going to be altered or we won't have it at all. Some fall seasons have already been canceled. I mean, we just got a lot going on right here, right now. You just changed jobs right into a pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah, so... but I look at it and I think right now I've got to be better than I was before. So I need to learn better ways to teach guys when I'm going to have to be a little socially distant. I'm going to have to. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have to learn different and better ways to inspire them. Because right now, inspire hope in them for sure. Right now, a lot of guys that are in college, I didn't sign up for this. This is not what I hoped for or believed was going to happen. So I've got to do a better job as a coach. You do as well. We got 12 guys. We need every day for them to have hope and excitement and be thriving through this every day. And if we can do that, that's going to be a great learning experience for us because we can see how our players handle it. And then I've never had a better platform as a coach to teach facing adversity. So if you don't think they're going to be watching you and I this year about how we handle this pandemic, they're going to be watching. So although I know we have some very challenging times ahead, I'm excited to see what I'm going to learn through this. So once again, this is just another part of that learning stage.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we appreciate you taking the time, Coach, to prepare this message. This is something you wanted to share on the podcast, and there will be episodes like this in the future as well. So I maybe want just the listeners to know that you've actually prepared this and thought about this for days because you want the message to be well spoken and well thought out. And so I just appreciate you taking that time to do that and sharing it with the listeners. I know a lot of people will appreciate it. And also, likewise, we appreciate the listeners so far. The feedback has been incredible, and it just makes it worthwhile for us, and especially for you, as you try and find a platform to share with other coaches to where you can help them as well.
Well, thank you, Mikkel, for even coming up with this idea. I probably wouldn't have come up with the idea of wanting to do this, but it's been healthy for me to kind of revisit some of these thoughts. And look forward to the next time. We have a really special guest coming up the next time. I can't wait. I won't announce it right now, but we've got a good guest next week.
Absolutely. And if you guys have any feedback, questions, get with us. We'd love to take your questions on the podcast in a kind of Q&A format at some point. So keep giving us feedback and questions, and stay tuned for the next ones. Thank you for listening.